I never thought I'd be sitting here, telling you this story. My hands are still shaking as I type these words, and honestly, I'm not even sure where to begin. But I guess the best place to start is with the moment my world came crashing down. The moment my own daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, you're just a burden. We can't keep doing this anymore." Those words hit me like a freight train. After everything I'd done, after all the sacrifices, after giving up my entire life to make sure she had everything she needed, that's what it came down to. I was a burden. But here's the thing about being called a burden by someone you love more than life itself. It changes you. It makes you realize just how much you've been taken for granted. And sometimes, just sometimes, it gives you the strength to do something about it. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 73 years old, and I've been living in the same house in suburban Denver for 47 years. It's a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style home with a big backyard where I used to grow tomatoes and sunflowers. The kitchen has those old yellow countertops from the 80s that I always meant to replace but never got around to. The living room still has the same burgundy carpet that my late husband Tom and I picked out in 1995. It's not much to look at, but it's been home for almost half a century. I raised 3 kids in this house. My oldest, Michael, moved to Seattle right after college and calls maybe twice a year. My middle child, Sarah, lives about an hour away in Boulder with her husband and 2 kids. She visits for holidays and birthdays, sends me cards, and genuinely seems to care about my well-being. But then there's Jessica, my youngest. Jessie has always been different. Even as a child, she had this way of making everything about her. She was the one who needed the most attention, the most help, the most everything. And foolishly, I gave it to her. When Tom passed away 8 years ago from a sudden heart attack, Jessica was the one who stepped up. Or at least, that's what I thought at the time. She was recently divorced, struggling financially, and had 2 teenage kids to support. When she suggested moving back into the family home to help take care of me, it seemed like the perfect solution. I was lonely. She needed a place to stay, and I thought we could help each other. If you've ever made a decision that seemed right at the time but slowly destroyed your life, hit that subscribe button. Because Sarah here understands exactly what that feels like. And I share these stories because I know so many of you are dealing with similar family situations. At first, things were okay. Jessica moved into her old bedroom, and her kids, Tyler and Emma, took over Michael's and Sarah's old rooms. The house felt alive again. There was noise and laughter, the smell of dinner cooking, homework spread across the kitchen table. I loved having my grandchildren so close. Tyler was 16 then, a quiet kid who spent most of his time playing video games or working on his car. Emma was 14, all attitude and eye rolls, but she'd still curl up next to me on the couch sometimes to watch old movies. But slowly, things started to change. Jessica began making comments about how the house was outdated and embarrassing. She'd bring friends over and apologize for the old-fashioned decor. She started rearranging things without asking, throwing away items that had sentimental value because they were cluttering up the space. When I protested, she'd say she was just trying to help, that I couldn't see how run down everything had become. The financial arrangement we'd agreed upon was simple. Jessica would pay for groceries and utilities, and I'd continue paying the mortgage and property taxes. But within 6 months, Jessica was complaining that groceries were too expensive, that the utility bills were outrageous, that she was basically supporting the household. She started asking me to contribute more, to help with her car payment, to lend her money for the kids' activities. And like a fool, I did it. I dipped into my savings, cashed in some of Tom's life insurance money, whatever it took to keep the peace. The real problem started about 2 years in. Jessica began treating me less like her mother, and more like an unwelcome tenant. She'd have friends over without telling me, and when I'd come out to say hello, she'd act embarrassed, like I was some doddering old woman who didn't know better than to stay in her room. She started making decisions about the house without consulting me, painting the living room a color I hated, ripping out Tom's carefully tended garden to make room for a hot tub she couldn't afford but bought anyway. When I tried to object, she'd get defensive. "I'm the one taking care of you," she'd say. "I'm the one who gave up my life to move back here. The least you can do is let me make the place livable." But I didn't need taking care of. I was perfectly capable of living independently. I had my health, my wits, my routines. What I needed was companionship. not a caretaker who acted like I was a burden. The breaking point came last month. Jessica had been dating a man named Derek for about 6 months. Derek was one of those guys who thinks he's charming but is actually just loud and obnoxious. He'd come over constantly, help himself to whatever was in the fridge, put his feet up on my coffee table, and change the channel on my TV without asking. He treated my home like his personal hangout spot, and Jessica seemed to love having him around. One evening, I was sitting in the living room watching my usual Thursday night shows when Derek and Jessica came bursting through the front door with a group of Derek's friends. They were loud, obviously drunk, and they immediately took over the living room. Derek grabbed the remote and switched to some action movie, cranking up the volume. His friends spread out across my furniture like they owned the place. I politely asked if they could keep it down, explaining that I was trying to watch my program. Derek looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Come on, Grandma," he said with this condescending smirk. "We're just having a little fun. Why don't you go to bed or something?" I felt my face flush with anger. "This is my house," I said, my voice shaking, "and I'm not your grandmother." That's when Jessica chimed in. "Mom, don't be difficult. We're not hurting anything. You can watch your shows anytime." "I watch these shows every Thursday night," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's my routine. This is my home." Derek laughed, actually laughed. "Your home? Jess, I thought you said you were taking care of her. Sounds like she's got some control issues." Jessica's face went red. I could see the embarrassment in her eyes, the way she was looking at me like I was some stubborn child who didn't know when to quit. "Mom, please, just go to your room for a couple hours. We'll keep it down." "Go to my room?" I stood up, my whole body trembling with rage. "In my own house? The house I've been paying for while you contribute nothing but attitude and entitlement?" That's when Derek made his mistake. He stood up too, all 6 feet of him looming over me. "Listen, lady, maybe it's time you realize that you can't take care of this place anymore. Maybe it's time to think about assisted living or something. Let the people who are actually capable of handling responsibility take over." The room went dead silent. Even his drunk friends seemed to realize he'd crossed a line. Jessica was staring at him with wide eyes, but she didn't say anything. She didn't defend me. She didn't tell him to get out. She just stood there. And in that moment, I saw exactly what she was thinking. She was thinking he was right. "Get out," I said quietly. "All of you, get out of my house." Derek laughed again. "Your house? Jess, who's actually on the deed here? Who's actually responsible for this place?" I looked at Jessica, waiting for her to answer, to tell him he was wrong, to stand up for me, but she just looked at the floor. "Mom," she said quietly, "maybe Derek has a point. Maybe we should talk about making some changes." That night, after Derek and his friends finally left, Jessica and I had the conversation that changed everything. She sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped her with homework, where we'd had birthday parties and Christmas mornings, where Tom and I had made countless family decisions over the years. "Mom," she said, her voice taking on that patient tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news. "I've been thinking about our situation, and I don't think it's working anymore." "What do you mean?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. "I mean, this house is too much for you to handle. The maintenance, the upkeep, the financial responsibility. You're 73 years old. You shouldn't have to worry about mortgage payments and property taxes and all that stuff. And honestly, I don't think I can keep supporting both of us on my income." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "Supporting both of us? Jessica, I pay the mortgage. I pay the property taxes. I pay for the house insurance. You pay for groceries and utilities, and half the time I end up covering those too when you're short on money." She waved her hand dismissively. "That's not the point, Mom. The point is that you're becoming a burden, not just financially, but emotionally. I can't live my life walking on eggshells, worrying about whether you're going to have a problem with my friends or my boyfriend, or the way I want to decorate. I'm 45 years old. I shouldn't have to ask permission to have people over or paint a room." "You shouldn't have to ask permission," I said slowly, "because it's not your house to make decisions about." She sighed, that long-suffering sigh that she'd perfected as a teenager. "See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so focused on ownership and control that you can't see the bigger picture. I'm trying to help you, and you're fighting me every step of the way." "Help me how exactly?" "By taking over the responsibilities that you can't handle anymore." "Mom, When's the last time you climbed a ladder to clean the gutters? When's the last time you mowed the lawn or fixed a leaky faucet? You're getting older, and there are things you just can't do anymore. I'm the one who takes care of all that stuff now. I thought about that for a moment. She was right that I didn't clean the gutters anymore. I paid a service to do that twice a year. I didn't mow the lawn. I had a neighbor kid who did it for $25 a week. I didn't fix leaky faucets. I called a plumber, like most people do. But somehow, in Jessica's mind, this had translated to her being responsible for maintaining the house. I can hire people to do those things, I said. I don't need you to take care of them. With what money? She shot back. Mom, I've seen your bank statements. I know what you have in savings. I know what your Social Security checks look like. You're barely getting by as it is. If I wasn't here helping with expenses, you'd be in serious financial trouble. This was news to me. I'd never shown Jessica my bank statements or discussed my finances with her in detail. How exactly have you seen my bank statements? She had the grace to look embarrassed. I've been helping you with your bills, remember? I've been organizing your paperwork, making sure everything gets paid on time. I've seen the numbers, Mom. You're not in a position to be independent anymore. I felt a chill run down my spine. What paperwork have you been organizing? Just bills and stuff. Bank statements, insurance papers, tax documents. I put them all in a filing system so everything's easier to find. In your room? Yes, in my room. I have a whole file cabinet set up. It's much more organized than that shoebox system you used to use. I stood up from the table, my legs feeling unsteady. I want to see my paperwork. Mom, it's late. We can go through it tomorrow if you want. I want to see it now. She sighed again, but she led me to her bedroom. In the corner was a gray metal filing cabinet that I'd never seen before. She opened the top drawer and pulled out a manila folder labeled Margaret Financial. Inside were bank statements, insurance documents, tax returns, and other papers that should have been in my possession. As I flipped through the documents, I started to understand what had been happening. Jessica had been intercepting my mail, organizing my financial information, and apparently making decisions about my money without my knowledge. There were bank statements showing withdrawals I didn't remember making, insurance changes I hadn't authorized, and worst of all, there were documents I'd never seen before. What is this? I asked, pointing to a paper that looked like some kind of financial assessment. Jessica's face went pale. That's just something I had done. A financial advisor looked at your situation and made some recommendations. What kind of recommendations? Just ways to make your money last longer. Ways to reduce your expenses and maximize your assets. I read through the document, my horror growing with each paragraph. The financial advisor had recommended that I sell the house and move into a senior living facility, use the proceeds to pay for care, and transfer any remaining assets to Jessica to avoid estate taxes. At the bottom of the document, there was a note suggesting that Jessica should consider seeking power of attorney to help manage my affairs. You want me to sell my house, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I want you to be taken care of, Jessica said, but her voice lacked conviction. Mom, you're not getting any younger. What happens if you fall and break a hip? What happens if you have a medical emergency? What happens if you develop dementia or Alzheimer's? You need to be somewhere where professionals can look after you. I'm 73, not 93. I'm in good health. I have my faculties. I don't need professional care, but you will eventually. And when that time comes, wouldn't it be better to have a plan in place? Wouldn't it be better to make these decisions while you're still capable of making them? I stared at my daughter, really looked at her, and I saw a stranger. This wasn't the little girl I'd raised, the one I'd rocked to sleep and helped with nightmares. This wasn't the young woman I'd supported through her divorce, the one I'd welcomed back into my home when she needed help. This was someone who had been systematically planning to take control of my life and my assets. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, let's talk about this rationally. Get out of my house. Tonight. Take your kids and your boyfriend and your filing cabinet and get out. Mom, you're being unreasonable. Where am I supposed to go? The kids are settled in school here. This is their home too. This is my home. It has always been my home. You are a guest here, and you are no longer welcome. That's when she said it. That's when she looked me in the eye and said the words that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Mom, you're just a burden. We can't keep doing this anymore. You're sick. You're confused. and you're making decisions that don't make sense. Maybe it's time to face the reality that you can't take care of yourself anymore. I felt something break inside me. Not just my heart, but something deeper. The trust I'd had in my daughter. The belief that family meant something. The assumption that the people you love most would never intentionally hurt you. All of it shattered in that moment. "I want to see the deed," I said. "What?" "The deed to this house. I want to see it right now." Jessica's face went from angry to worried. "Mom, what are you talking about? Why do you need to see the deed?" "Because you seem to be confused about who owns this house. Derek seems to think you're responsible for it. You seem to think you have the right to make decisions about it. So let's clear this up right now. I want to see the deed. It's probably in the filing cabinet." "No, it's not. It's in my safety deposit box at the bank, where it's been for 47 years. But I have a copy in my bedroom, and I'm going to get it right now." I walked to my bedroom, my hands shaking with rage and adrenaline. In my dresser drawer, underneath some old photos and letters, was a manila envelope containing copies of important documents. I pulled out the deed and walked back to Jessica's room, where she was standing next to the filing cabinet, looking like she'd been caught stealing. "Here," I said, holding up the deed. "Margaret Helen Thompson, sole owner. Not Jessica Thompson Miller. Not Derek, whoever his last name is. Me. This is my house. I bought it with my husband 47 years ago. I've been paying the mortgage for 47 years. I've been paying the property taxes for 47 years. I've been paying for the upkeep and maintenance for 47 years. And when Tom died, the house became mine alone. Not ours. Not yours. Mine." Jessica was crying now, but I wasn't done. "You want to know what a burden looks like? A burden is someone who moves into your house rent-free, takes over your space, makes decisions about your property without permission, intercepts your mail, organizes your private financial information without consent, and then has the audacity to tell you that you're the problem." "Mom, I was just trying to help." "You were trying to help yourself. You were trying to find a way to get your hands on my house and my money, while making it look like you were doing me a favor. Well, congratulations, Jessica. You've succeeded in showing me exactly who you really are." I walked to the front door and opened it. "You have until tomorrow night to find somewhere else to live. I want you and your children out of my house." "Mom, please. Let's talk about this. I made mistakes, but I was trying to look out for you." "No, you weren't. You were looking out for yourself, and now you can do it somewhere else." She left the next morning, taking Tyler and Emma with her. I watched from my living room window as they loaded their belongings into her car and Derek's pickup truck. Emma was crying, and Tyler looked confused and angry. I felt a pang of guilt about the kids, but I knew I'd made the right decision. They needed to see that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people badly and expect them to just accept it. The house felt strange after they left, quiet in a way it hadn't been for years. I walked through the rooms, looking at the changes Jessica had made. The living room walls were still that awful beige color she'd painted them. The kitchen still had the modern cabinet handles she'd installed without asking. Tom's garden was still torn up from the hot tub that Derek had never bothered to install properly before they left. But you know what? The silence felt good. For the first time in years, I could walk through my own house without feeling like I was intruding on someone else's space. I could watch my Thursday night shows without worrying about being interrupted. I could eat dinner at my own kitchen table without having to listen to complaints about the meal or the decor or my old-fashioned ways. That first week was hard, I won't lie. I kept expecting to hear Tyler's music coming from upstairs, or Emma's laughter from the backyard. I kept cooking enough food for 4 people and then remembering I was alone. But slowly, I started to remember what it felt like to be comfortable in my own home. I called Sarah and told her what had happened. She was shocked, but not entirely surprised. "Mom," she said, "I've been worried about Jessica for a while now. Every time I visited, she seemed to be treating you more like a roommate than her mother, and not a roommate she particularly liked. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because she's my sister, and I didn't want to cause family drama. But honestly, I was starting to think she was taking advantage of you. Sarah offered to help me find a lawyer to make sure all my financial documents were secure, and that Jessica hadn't done anything that could cause problems later. We discovered that Jessica had indeed been intercepting my mail, but she hadn't actually accessed any of my bank accounts or made any legal changes to my property. The financial advisor she'd consulted had given her information about options, but nothing had been set in motion. The lawyer also helped me understand my rights as a property owner and what I could do to protect myself in the future. I set up a proper filing system for my important documents, arranged for direct deposit of my Social Security checks, and made sure that only I had access to my financial information. But the most important thing I did was reclaim my independence. I hired a house cleaning service to come once a week. I found a reliable handyman who could take care of minor repairs and maintenance. I joined a senior center that offered activities and social opportunities. I started volunteering at the local animal shelter. I remembered what it felt like to make my own decisions about my own life. Jessica tried to contact me several times in the weeks after she left. She sent text messages apologizing and asking if we could talk. She had Tyler and Emma call me, asking when they could come visit. But I wasn't ready to forgive, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. The hardest part was missing my grandchildren. Tyler texted me occasionally, asking how I was doing and sharing updates about school and work. Emma sent me photos of her art projects and asked for my cornbread recipe. I could tell they were caught in the middle of a situation they didn't fully understand, and it broke my heart. About 6 weeks after Jessica left, Derek showed up at my door. He was alone, and he looked rough, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, bloodshot eyes. He asked if he could come in to talk, and against my better judgment, I let him. "I owe you an apology," he said, sitting on the edge of my couch like he was afraid I might kick him out at any moment. "I was out of line that night. I had no right to speak to you that way in your own home." "No, you didn't," I agreed. "The thing is, Jessica had been telling me that you were having problems, memory issues, confusion, that kind of thing. She said you were getting paranoid and suspicious, and that she was worried about your ability to live independently." I felt my blood pressure rising. "And you believed her?" "I wanted to help her, you know. She seemed so stressed about taking care of you, and I thought maybe she was right. Maybe you did need more help than you were willing to admit." "Did it ever occur to you to talk to me directly? To form your own opinion about my mental state?" He looked ashamed. "No, it didn't. I trusted her version of events, and I shouldn't have. After you kicked us out that night, I started thinking about the things she'd told me, and some of them didn't add up. You seemed perfectly lucid to me. Angry, but lucid. What kinds of things didn't add up?" "Well, she said you were having trouble managing your finances, but your house is in good shape. Your bills are obviously getting paid, and you seem to be doing fine on your own. She said you were becoming confused and forgetful, but every conversation I had with you, you seemed sharp as a tack. She said you were paranoid about people trying to take advantage of you, but based on what I saw in those files, maybe you had good reason to be paranoid." He paused, running his hands through his hair. "I think Jessica has been lying to me, Mrs. Thompson. I think she's been lying to everyone, including herself." "What do you mean?" I think she convinced herself that you were incapable of taking care of yourself because it made her feel better about wanting to take control of your life. If you were sick or confused or incompetent, then she was being a good daughter by stepping in. But if you were perfectly fine, then she was just being greedy and manipulative." I studied his face, trying to determine if he was being sincere or if this was some kind of manipulation on Jessica's behalf. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I broke up with her. Because I realized that if she could lie to me about you, she could lie to me about anything. And because I think you deserve to know the truth about what's been going on." Derek told me that Jessica had been planning to get power of attorney over my finances for months. She'd been researching senior living facilities and getting quotes for selling the house. She'd been telling Tyler and Emma that I was sick and that they needed to be prepared for me to move away soon. She'd been setting up a narrative where I was the problem and she was the solution. "The night you kicked us out," Derek said, "she was furious. Not because she was going to miss you or because she was worried about you. She was furious because her plan had fallen apart. She kept saying that you'd ruined everything, that you were being selfish and stubborn. And what did you say?" "I said that it was your house and your decision. I said that maybe she should have talked to you openly instead of trying to manipulate the situation. That's when she told me the truth about what she'd been doing." According to Derek, Jessica had been intercepting my mail for over a year. She'd been reading my bank statements, insurance documents, and medical information. She'd been calling my doctor's office and trying to get information about my health, claiming to be concerned about my memory and cognitive function. She'd been researching lawyers who specialized in elder law and guardianship proceedings. "She was building a case," Derek said. "She was collecting evidence to prove that you were incompetent and that she needed to take over your affairs. The problem was, There wasn't any real evidence, so she was trying to create it. Create it how? By making you seem paranoid and unreasonable. By putting you in situations where you'd get angry or confused. Then pointing to your reactions as proof that you weren't thinking clearly. By isolating you from other people so that her version of events would be the only one people heard. I thought about all the times Jessica had dismissed my concerns. All the times she'd made me feel like I was overreacting or being difficult. I thought about the way she'd talked about me to Derek and his friends, like I was some doddering old woman who couldn't be trusted to make her own decisions. What made you realize what she was doing? Honestly, it was the way she talked about you after we left your house. She wasn't sad or worried or regretful. She was angry and calculating. She immediately started talking about other ways to get control of your situation. She mentioned calling Adult Protective Services and claiming that you were living in unsafe conditions. She talked about having you declared mentally incompetent. My blood ran cold. She was going to call APS? She was considering it. She thought if she could get them to investigate, they might determine that you needed a guardian or conservator. Then she could step in and take over your finances and property. I felt sick. The idea that my own daughter would try to have me declared incompetent, that she would involve government agencies in a scheme to take control of my life, was almost too horrible to believe. Is that legal? I asked. It can be, if there's genuine cause for concern. But based on what I've seen, there isn't. You're perfectly capable of taking care of yourself. You don't need a guardian or conservator. You need family members who respect your autonomy and your rights. Derek left after about an hour, but not before giving me his phone number and telling me to call him if Jessica tried to cause any more problems. I didn't know if I could trust him, but I appreciated the warning about Jessica's potential plans. That night, I called Sarah and told her everything Derek had said. She was horrified. Mom, we need to do something about this. We need to make sure Jessica can't file false reports or make false claims about your competency. What can we do? We can document everything. We can get statements from your doctor about your mental and physical health. We can have your lawyer create a written assessment of your capacity to make decisions. We can build a record that shows you're perfectly fine, so that if Jessica tries to claim otherwise, we have evidence to contradict her. Over the next few weeks, Sarah helped me gather documentation of my competency and independence. My doctor wrote a letter stating that I was in good health for my age and showed no signs of cognitive decline. My lawyer prepared a document outlining my mental capacity and my right to make my own decisions about my property and finances. I had a home inspection done to show that my house was in good condition and that I was maintaining it properly. But the most important thing I did was start rebuilding my life without Jessica. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with over the years. I started attending activities at the senior center. I joined a book club and a gardening group. I began volunteering at the animal shelter and the local food bank. I remembered what it felt like to have a social life that didn't revolve around my daughter's needs and moods. I also started seeing a therapist. I know some people think therapy is just for people with serious mental health problems, but I needed help processing what had happened. I needed to understand how I'd allowed myself to be manipulated and taken advantage of. I needed to work through the anger and hurt I felt toward Jessica. The therapist helped me understand that what Jessica had done was a form of financial and emotional abuse. She had systematically undermined my confidence, invaded my privacy, and planned to take control of my life and assets. The fact that she was my daughter didn't make it any less serious or harmful. Many adult children who abuse their elderly parents justify their behavior by claiming they're acting in their parents' best interest, the therapist explained. They convince themselves that they know what's best, that their parent is incapable of making good decisions, and that they need to step in and take control. But the reality is often that they're motivated by greed, convenience, or a desire for power. Do you think Jessica really believed I was incompetent? I think Jessica believed what she needed to believe to justify her actions. If she admitted that you were perfectly capable of taking care of yourself, then she'd have to admit that her behavior was wrong. It was easier to convince herself that you were the problem. The therapist also helped me understand that setting boundaries with Jessica wasn't cruel or selfish. It was necessary for my own well-being and safety. You have the right to live in your own home without being manipulated or controlled, she said. You have the right to make your own decisions about your life and your property. You have the right to be treated with respect and dignity by your family members. It's been 3 months now since Jessica left, and I'm doing better than I have in years. I've redecorated the living room, choosing colors that I actually like. I've replanted Tom's garden with vegetables and flowers. I've had the hot tub removed and the yard restored. I've made the house mine again. Tyler and Emma have been coming to visit me on weekends. Jessica drops them off but doesn't come inside. The kids seem to be adjusting to the new situation, and they're starting to understand that I'm not the villain in this story. Tyler even apologized to me for not speaking up when Derek was being disrespectful. I knew it was wrong, he said, but I didn't know what to say. I was embarrassed that my mom's boyfriend was treating my grandmother that way. You don't need to apologize for your mother's choices, I told him, but I appreciate you saying that. Emma has been more direct. Mom keeps saying you're sick, and that you kicked us out because you're confused, she said during one of their visits. But you don't seem sick to me. You seem like the same grandma you've always been. I'm not sick, sweetheart. I'm just not willing to be treated badly in my own home. I miss living here, she said. Mom's apartment is small, and Derek isn't around anymore, but there's always some new drama. It's not peaceful like it is here. That broke my heart. I wanted to tell her that she could come live with me, that I'd love to have her and Tyler back, but I also knew that would create more problems with Jessica, and I didn't want to put the kids in the middle of an even bigger conflict. Sarah has been incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal. She calls me every few days to check on me, and she visits at least once a week. She's helped me with practical things like finding reliable service providers and organizing my finances, but she's also been there emotionally when I needed to talk through my feelings about Jessica. I keep wondering if I did something wrong, I told her one day. If I somehow failed as a mother, if I enabled Jessica's behavior, if I should have seen this coming. Mom, you didn't fail as a mother. You treated Jessica the same way you treated Michael and me. You loved her, supported her, and tried to help her when she needed it. The fact that she chose to take advantage of that love and support is on her, not on you. But how did I not see what she was doing? Because you trusted her. Because you assumed that your daughter had your best interests at heart. Because you couldn't imagine that someone you loved so much would deliberately try to harm you. Sarah was right, but it still hurt. It hurt to realize that I'd been so naive, so willing to believe the best of Jessica even when the evidence suggested otherwise. It hurt to know that my own daughter had been planning to take control of my life and had been manipulating me to achieve that goal. But you know what hurt the most? The realization that Jessica had never really seen me as a person with my own rights and autonomy. To her, I was just an obstacle to be managed, a problem to be solved, a resource to be controlled. She'd never considered that I might have my own opinions about my life, my own plans for my future, my own right to make decisions about my property and my care. I think about Tom sometimes, and what he would have said about all this. He was always better at seeing through people's BS than I was. He probably would have spotted Jessica's manipulation much earlier and put a stop to it. But he also would have been heartbroken to see what our daughter had become. She used to be such a sweet little girl, I told Sarah one day. Remember how she used to bring me flowers from the backyard? How she'd curl up in my lap and ask me to read her stories? Where did that little girl go? She's still in there somewhere, Sarah said. But she's buried under years of selfishness and entitlement. Maybe someday she'll find her way back to being the person she used to be. I hope Sarah is right, but I'm not holding my breath. Jessica has contacted me a few times since Derek's visit, sending text messages that alternate between apologies and accusations. One day she'll tell me she's sorry for everything and that she wants to make things right. The next day, she'll send a long message about how I'm being unreasonable and how I'm going to regret pushing my family away. The most recent message came last week. It was long and rambling, full of justifications and self-pity. She claimed that everything she'd done was out of love and concern for my well-being. She said I was being manipulated by Sarah, and that I was too proud to admit I needed help. She accused me of being selfish and stubborn, of caring more about my house than about my family. But then, at the end of the message, she wrote something that revealed her true motivations. Mom, you're 73 years old. You can't live forever. What's going to happen to the house when you're gone? What's going to happen to your money? Don't you want to make sure your family is taken care of? There it was. The real reason behind everything. Jessica wasn't concerned about my well-being or my ability to live independently. She was concerned about her inheritance. She was worried that I might live too long, that I might spend my money on my own care. that there might not be anything left for her when I died. I showed the message to Sarah, and she shook her head in disgust. She's unbelievable. Even now, when she's supposedly apologizing, she's thinking about money. Do you think I should respond? I think you should block her number. I think you should stop letting her manipulate your emotions with these messages. You've made your position clear. You don't need to keep explaining yourself to someone who refuses to listen. Sarah was right, but it's hard to cut off contact with your own child, even when that child has hurt you deeply. There's a part of me that keeps hoping Jessica will have a genuine change of heart, that she'll realize what she's done and make a real effort to repair our relationship. But I'm starting to understand that hope might be misplaced. The therapist has been helping me work through these feelings. It's normal to grieve the loss of the relationship you thought you had with your daughter, she said. It's normal to feel angry and hurt and confused, but you also need to accept that you can't force someone to change. You can only control your own actions and responses. So what do? You continue to live your life on your own terms. You continue to protect yourself from manipulation and abuse. You continue to build relationships with people who treat you with respect and kindness. And you let Jessica deal with the consequences of her choices. I've been trying to follow that advice. I've been focusing on the positive relationships in my life, with Sarah, with Tyler and Emma, with the new friends I've made at the senior center, and through my volunteer work. I've been taking care of myself physically and emotionally. I've been enjoying my home and my independence, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't still hurt. Every time I see a mother and daughter shopping together or having lunch, I feel a pang of sadness for what Jessica and I have lost. Every time the holidays come around, I miss the family gatherings we used to have. Every time I have good news to share or need someone to talk to, I instinctively think about calling Jessica before I remember that she's no longer a safe person to confide in. The hardest part is wondering if I'll ever have a relationship with my grandchildren once they're adults. Right now, Tyler and Emma still visit me, but I know Jessica is working on turning them against me. She's probably telling them that I'm sick, that I'm mean, that I chose my house over my family. I can only hope that as they get older, they'll be able to see the truth for themselves. Tyler is 18 now, and he's been asking more questions about what happened. He's starting to understand that there are two sides to every story, and that his mother's version of events might not be entirely accurate. Last month, he asked me directly what had happened between Jessica and me. I told him the truth, but I tried to do it in a way that didn't completely destroy his relationship with his mother. Your mom and I had different ideas about how I should live my life, I said. She thought I needed more help than I actually needed, and she was making plans for my future without including me in the decision-making process. I felt like I was losing control of my own life. She said you were getting sick and confused, Tyler said. She said you were making bad decisions and that she was trying to protect you. Do I seem sick and confused to you? He looked around my house, which was clean and organized. He looked at me, dressed and groomed and clearly in control of my faculties. No, he said slowly. You seem fine. I am fine. I'm 73, not 93. I'm in good health, I'm mentally sharp, and I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions about my life and my property. Then why did Mom say all those things? I think your mom convinced herself that I needed help because it made her feel better about wanting to control my life. Sometimes people tell themselves stories to justify their behavior, even when those stories aren't true. Tyler was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I'm sorry, Grandma. I should have stood up for you more. I should have questioned what Mom was saying. You were caught in the middle of a difficult situation. You were trying to be loyal to your mother while also caring about me. That's not an easy position to be in. I missed living here, he said. I missed the way the house felt when you were in charge. It was peaceful and stable. With Mom, there's always some kind of drama or crisis. That conversation gave me hope that Tyler, at least, was starting to understand the truth about what had happened. Emma is still younger and more influenced by Jessica's narrative, but I hope that someday she'll be able to see the situation more clearly too. Meanwhile, I've been working on building a life that doesn't revolve around Jessica's problems and manipulations. I've been taking art classes at the senior center, learning to paint watercolors. I've been volunteering at the animal shelter, helping to socialize rescued dogs. I've been traveling a bit, taking day trips to places I've always wanted to visit. I've also been working on my house, making improvements that I've been putting off for years. I had the kitchen updated with new countertops and appliances. I had the bathrooms renovated to be more accessible as I get older. I had the whole house painted, inside and out, in colors that I actually like. Every improvement I make feels like a small victory, a way of reclaiming my space and my autonomy. This is my house, my home, my sanctuary. I've worked hard for it, I've maintained it, and I've earned the right to live in it on my own terms. I've also been thinking about my future in a more realistic way. I'm not going to live forever, and there may come a time when I need more help than I can manage on my own. But when that time comes, I want to be the one making the decisions about my care. I want to choose where I live, who I trust with my finances, and how I spend my final years. I've been working with my lawyer to create a comprehensive estate plan that reflects my wishes and protects my assets. I've designated Sarah as my power of attorney and healthcare proxy, since she's the only one of my children who has consistently treated me with respect and honesty. I've made arrangements for my house to be sold when I no longer need it, with the proceeds distributed according to my wishes. I've also created a trust that will provide for Tyler and Emma's education and future needs, regardless of what happens with Jessica. I want to make sure my grandchildren are taken care of, even if their mother and I never reconcile. It's been almost 6 months now since Jessica left, and I can honestly say that I'm happier than I've been in years. I wake up each morning in my own house, in my own bed, without having to worry about someone else's mood or agenda. I eat my meals at my own table, watch my own TV programs, and go to bed when I want to. I've rediscovered hobbies and interests that I'd set aside during the years when Jessica was living here. I'm reading more, gardening again, and even learning to use a computer so I can stay in touch with old friends and make new ones online. I'm taking better care of my health, exercising regularly and eating well. Most importantly, I've regained my sense of self-worth and autonomy. I'm not a burden. I'm not a problem to be solved. I'm a person with my own rights, my own opinions, and my own agency. I have the right to live in my own home, to make my own decisions, and to be treated with respect by my family members. I know some people might think I was too harsh with Jessica, that I should have given her more chances, that family is more important than pride. But I disagree. Family relationships should be based on love, respect, and mutual support. They shouldn't be based on manipulation, control, and exploitation. Jessica had years to treat me with kindness and respect. She had countless opportunities to talk to me openly about her concerns instead of going behind my back. She had every chance to be the loving, supportive daughter I raised her to be. Instead, she chose to lie, manipulate, and scheme. She chose to treat me like an incompetent child, rather than the capable adult I am. I didn't kick Jessica out because I'm stubborn or prideful. I kicked her out because she was abusing me, financially and emotionally. I kicked her out because she was systematically undermining my independence and planning to take control of my life. I kicked her out because I finally realized that I deserved better treatment from my own daughter. If you're watching this video and you're dealing with a similar situation, I want you to know that you're not alone. Elder abuse by family members is more common than people realize, and it's not your fault. You don't have to tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or control from anyone, even your own children. You have the right to live your life on your own terms, to make your own decisions, and to be treated with dignity and respect. You have the right to protect your assets and your autonomy. You have the right to say no to family members who are trying to take advantage of you. It's not easy to stand up to family members who are manipulating you. It's especially hard when they're your own children, because we want to believe that our children love us and have our best interests at heart. But sometimes, the people who are supposed to love us most are the ones who hurt us the most. If you're in a situation where family members are questioning your competency, intercepting your mail, making decisions about your property without your consent, or pressuring you to sign legal documents, please get help. Contact a lawyer who specializes in elder law. Talk to your doctor about your mental and physical health. Reach out to Adult Protective Services if you're being abused or neglected. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too old, too sick, or too confused to make your own decisions. Don't let anyone tell you that you're a burden, or that you need to be grateful for treatment that makes you feel bad about yourself. You know your own mind, and you know what's best for your own life. I'm sharing my story because I want other people to know that it's possible to stand up to family members who are trying to take advantage of you. It's possible to reclaim your independence and your dignity. It's possible to live your life on your own terms, even when the people closest to you don't approve. It's been a difficult journey, And there are still days when I feel sad about what I've lost with Jessica, but I'm proud of myself for having the courage to stand up for what was right. I'm proud of myself for refusing to be manipulated and controlled. I'm proud of myself for choosing my own well-being over family peace. I'm 73 years old, and I'm living my best life. I'm healthy, I'm happy, and I'm free. I'm surrounded by people who love and respect me. I'm engaged in activities that bring me joy and fulfillment. I'm making my own decisions about my own life, and that's exactly how it should be. To everyone who's been following my story, thank you for listening. Thank you for your support and encouragement. Thank you for reminding me that I'm not alone, and that my feelings are valid. Your comments and messages have meant more to me than you know. I hope my story helps someone else who might be dealing with similar family dynamics. I hope it encourages you to stand up for yourself, to protect your assets and your autonomy, and to demand the respect you deserve. You're never too old to start over, to make changes, and to choose your own happiness. And if you're someone who has been taking advantage of an elderly family member, I hope my story makes you think twice about your behavior. I hope it helps you understand that your parents or grandparents are not your property, that they have their own rights and feelings, and that they deserve to be treated with love and respect. Family relationships should be based on mutual care and support, not on control and manipulation. If you're concerned about an elderly family member's well-being, talk to them openly and honestly. Include them in decisions about their care. Respect their autonomy and their right to make their own choices. Don't assume that age equals incompetence. Don't assume that you know what's best for someone else's life. Don't assume that you have the right to make decisions about someone else's property or finances. And don't assume that your elderly family members should be grateful for treatment that makes them feel diminished or controlled. As I sit here in my living room, in my own house, writing this story, I feel a sense of peace that I haven't felt in years. The sun is streaming through the windows that I chose, onto the furniture that I picked out, in the colors that I love. This is my space, my sanctuary, my home, and no one can take that away from me. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Jessica will ever genuinely apologize for what she did, or if we'll ever have a real relationship again. I don't know if Tyler and Emma will continue to visit me as they get older, or if Jessica will succeed in turning them against me. But I know that I made the right choice in standing up for myself. I know that I deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. I know that I have the right to live my life on my own terms. And I know that I'm strong enough to handle whatever comes next. If you've made it this far in my story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where a family member was trying to control or manipulate you? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Have you ever felt like you were being treated as less than you are by the people who are supposed to love you most? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. I'd love to know that I'm not the only one who has faced these kinds of challenges, and I'd love to offer support and encouragement to anyone who might be dealing with similar situations. We're all in this together, and sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is share our stories and let others know that they're not alone. Thank you for listening to mine, and thank you for being part of this community of people who believe in treating each other with dignity and respect. Remember, you're never too old to stand up for yourself. You're never too old to demand better treatment. You're never too old to choose your own happiness. And you're never too old to start over and build the life you truly want. This is my house, my life, and my story, and I'm proud of all three.